Rob Namowitz, and I'm here to do an interview with Neil Wallace. I've endorsed him for the candidate for supervisor of Independence Township, and I'm going to elucidate the reasons why I'm supporting him by asking him questions about why he wants to be supervisor of Independence Township. So, Neil Wallace, tell us about yourself. Why are you running for Independence Township supervisor?
Hi Rob, how are you?
Just honky-dory, thank you.
Thanks for stopping by.
I'm glad I could.
I'm running because I feel responsibility to take on that leadership role for the township. It's a good time for me in terms of the experiences that I've had. I'm not sure I was even qualified when I began as a township trustee in my second term in 2008. We had to take such a deep dive into the budgets and operations of the township. I learned an awful lot about how it works, and I feel like I'm prepared to take that responsibility on.
The first time I ran into you at a township meeting was probably 25 years ago. You were sitting in the back of the room scribbling on a yellow pad. And I said, "Why are you here?" You weren't on the agenda, you had nothing to do with it. And you said, "Because somebody needs to keep an eye on them," or something to that. Is that what drew you to township government in the first place, or how did that happen?
The very first time I was drawn to township government, I read a story in the Oakland Press about something the board was going to decide. That was more than 30 years ago, closer to 35, and I went to the board meeting and stood up and had something to say. After the meeting, I was walking out in the parking lot, and a group of folks were standing around talking about the events of the evening, and one of them leaned out of the crowd and pulled me over and said, "Young man, you need to be with us." It did lead me to attending township board meetings to learn more about this whole self-government thing that we're all involved in, and I periodically would just go to the meetings. You know, as a part of the self-government thing, and frankly, it was a bit entertaining. And in those days, it wasn't on TV.
And now it is, so everybody gets to see you all the time. One thing that they do see quite often is the plaid tie, the tartan tie. What's the story with the tartan tie?
Well, of course, it's my family tartan. It's the Wallace tartan, and it's kind of a reminder for me more than for everybody else that there's certain principles that my family had, and that it's a reminder to me to stick true to those principles.
So do you feel as though it's a sort of a tip of the hat to frugality?
Well, it's certainly all of that. The Scots are famous for their frugality, and I've tried to do that. I think it's come out when we've done our budget work for the township, that's where I start with.
The budgetary process was really a mess, and you worked pretty hard to straighten that out. How did that come about? I mean, it was a ruin when you got there.
Yeah, actually, when I ran in 2008, one of the things I ran on was that we needed to straighten out that process. The supervisor historically would come to the board at the last minute before the budget was due and just kind of give us a broad overview of what he'd been working on. What I wanted us to do, and what we have done over the last several years, is taken a deep dive into the budgets, and month by month by month had one extra meeting just devoted to the budgets. And by doing that, we were able to understand the operations better and understand the budgets better. And it turned out something we really needed because of the recession that we went through, the problems with the income that the township had, and our need to really understand and be able to continue to deliver services with more limited resources.
Is there a component there creating the numbers so that people can see them on television, so that people can begin to understand the budget themselves, so they understand where the tax dollars are going?
Well, no question about the fact that when the board has taken a deeper dive into the budget numbers, it became more public, and I pushed to have the budgets put up on the township's website. There was some resistance from the administration to that, but ultimately we won out and got those published. The other thing we did is began to look 3 years out and begin to plan for capital improvements, because prior administrations had really significantly deferred township maintenance, and so you could park a lot of money in savings, but if your assets are deteriorating, you're not really saving.
So the 3-year budget model isn't that the Oakland County model that's been used for a long time by the folks down there in financial?
It hasn't been a real long time that they've used the 3-year, but you're right, they are doing it. Frankly, when we proposed it, and by that I mean Dave Lohmeyer and some of the other folks that ran in 2008, we weren't really looking at what the county was doing. We just thought it was something that made sense, and it certainly has worked for the county.
As you go forward toward becoming supervisor, one of the issues that's been very important has been the fire millage issue that's upcoming. Now, most of your initiatives with the township and through your actions as a trustee have been in the area of making the township thrifty and being frugal. How do you square that with the upcoming fire millage renewal and the increase that's been asked for that you've endorsed and supported for the election in August?
Yeah, I make no bones about it. In the first instance, over the course of the last 4 years, the fire chief and the union have cooperated on 2 reorganizations that I'm impressed by, saved us a lot of money. But more needed to be done. The township board took a very deep look at this to try and find ways to get by. And the firefighters themselves even went without a raise. They gave up a raise that they had coming by contract. So they understand the depth of the problem. I think it's a very important service for this community. I'm convinced that this slight increase that we'll need is absolutely necessary. I really think that if township government doesn't provide for fire and police, it's pointless really to exist. I've often said that for me, of the top 10 priorities, whatever they are for the township, 1 through 7 are police and fire. So I think it's vitally important. It's a very small increase. The average market value of a home in Independence Township right now is $212,000. That means the average homeowner will pay about $60 more a year for very excellent fire service and very excellent emergency medical services. We're lucky to have those services, and I believe they're part of having a quality residential community. So I support not only the renewal, but the small increase as well.
So Neil, in the upcoming November election, there's going to be a ballot issue about the library for folks who may want to spend more time at the library. They might want to see it funded a little bit better. I understand you're a friend of the library. Can you flesh that out for us? You work with the library?
Well, I have been on the Friends of the Library organization, but more importantly, we have a real problem with the library. We got a very strong vote in 2010 to renew the millage at .691 mils. But that wasn't enough to fund the library, as it turned out, and because it's under an antiquated a law that no longer exists, we can't raise the millage over that and have the library our community really deserves. It turns out we spend just over $30 per capita on our library, where communities around us like Brandon and Orion spend over $50 per resident. Our library is a fantastic resource, a part of what makes this a quality residential community, and I think we can do better. For 2012, the township had to supplement the library's budget to the tune of $135,000 just so that it could continue to provide services. The library is going to go downhill if we don't do something more. So we've gone to what's called a district library. The township board just approved it. It's about to go before the city council. That will result in a library board that'll separately govern the library, and they will propose a millage probably at 1.25 mils, which Julie Meredith, the librarian, has put together a series of alternatives, and this library agreement committee that I served on settled on that as being the appropriate millage to keep the library at a service level that really befits this community.
Well, you know, Neil, I think that a lot of people who may be watching and people who live in the township don't understand how many people actually live in Independence Township. What's our residents' population right now?
The township alone, 2010 census was just below 35,000. I don't have any reason to believe that's increased dramatically. And of course, the village would be about another 1,000 people, give or take.
The population and the numbers drive a lot of different things. McLaren Hospital has been trying to get here into Independence Township for a long, long time. How does the population affect healthcare opportunities in Independence Township, and how will it affect it in the future?
Well, the McLaren proposal is really for regional development, not just for Independence Township. If Independence Township had 35,000 residents in the middle of nowhere, McLaren would want anything to do with us. So we're being asked to host what is really a regional development. I was opposed to that originally back in 2007 because I believe there was an imbalance. An imbalance in the sense that a large part of the facility there at McLaren would not pay real estate taxes like the rest of us do. And so the taxpayers would be at risk to have to come up with the money to support them by providing infrastructure. One of the things that was overlooked back then was the fact that we're going to need over $2 million to improve the water system just to provide water to the hospital. I took it upon my own to meet with the McLaren representatives beginning in February of this year to cover some of those issues once I decided I wanted to be the township supervisor. I found that their business model had changed, so as a result of that, they were going to be reducing the size of some of their non-taxable facilities and increasing the size of some of the taxable facilities. So that helped with the balance. I also told them about the water thing and some other issues so that they could help us get that balance back in balance. And one of the key things that I got from them, I believe, is a pledge that they will be on track to become a level 2 trauma center. What that means is that they will have, from the get-go, board-certified emergency physicians of a variety of disciplines, so that while we're perched right on I-75, they're ready to take care of the real serious possible problems that we'll have, so they won't have emergencies being shipped out to Ann Arbor or down to Beaumont. I think that was crucial for us to have if we're going to have such a large facility here.
With a population of 35,000, I mean, that's just the beginning number. There are a lot of different numbers that affect how the township gets supervised, which is what you want to do. We do have older things, not just the McLaren new developments. There are older developments too. We have the old Saginaw Trail or Dixie Highway. What about the commercial rehab district?
The commercial rehab district is something that's been something of a disappointment to me because of the lack of leadership on this particular point. Back in 2009, the Township Board, with the assistance of the Planning Commission, put into effect a state-authorized commercial rehabilitation district. By the terms of that, a business in that district, if they improve their facilities, would not be taxed for a period of time on the value of those improvements. That was meant to be a draw to businesses that came here. It didn't work. It hasn't been used yet because no one, not in the building department, not the supervisor, whose job it is, did not reach out to these businesses. So for instance, we had Weingart's and the Royal Diner, which came and invested a lot of money in this community. Had they known in advance, they could have saved some money, but the real important point is that there could be others that could be filling up some of these facilities. And I would take it upon myself to reach out and find the kind of businesses that fit within our land use master plan and attract them to our community. In doing that helps us to diversify the tax base so that it isn't just residential properties that are bearing the burden of the taxes.
A lot of voters don't really live and breathe politics all the time, and mostly they hear alphabet soup. They hear acronyms all over the place. And one that's been bandied about in our township is the CIA. Most people think the CIA is a bunch of spooks and spies, but we know the CIA is something else. Can you elucidate what's been going on with the new Clarkston?
This the Sashabaw Corridor Improvement Authority really was begun under a prior administration. I questioned at the time its necessity. The idea there was to undertake projects that would enhance the Sashabaw Corridor, again to draw the right kind of businesses that fit within our community. The problem is that the CIA had scraped off all this money from the library, from fire, from police, through something called a TIFA, a Tax Incremental Finance Authority, where they were able to take portions of those tax monies and put them in a fund, but they weren't spending them. They had just 3 projects to do and they weren't doing any of them. Instead, they were studying. I pushed them, demonstrated to them that they had enough money, and so finally they did the landscaping that you see now along South Sashabaw. The other thing that's been going on for the last few months is that I've been working with the Township Superintendent, Bart Clark, to do infrastructure improvements on North Sashabaw from I-75 up to the entrance to Pine Ave. I'll always call it that. I know the official name is DTE. The idea is not just to improve that traffic flow, but also to finally get developed in the office and specialty uses the left side or the west side of Sashabaw. Again, and so what we're looking at doing is 5 lanes, sewer and water, lighting, and perhaps we'll use every other light from South Sashabaw and put it on North Sashabaw so we don't risk planes trying to land on South Sashabaw.
There's going to be a widening?
Well, a widening of North Sashabaw from the existing 3 lanes to 5 lanes. So you'd have 2 either way and a turn lane. And we think that left turn lane is what's vital to the development of the properties on the west side of the road. That and sewer and water.
There's a blog that you've been writing for quite a while called Our Township Matters, using the alphabetical letter R, Township Matters. Folks can go to that blog and go a little deeper in depth about some of the things that you consider to be very important in the township. Can you give our viewers just a thumbnail sketch of what they might find if they go to Our Township Matters?
Well, there's short essays, at least I try to keep them short, but they go more in depth than slogans or the things that come out at township board meetings. And it was my opportunity to communicate directly with folks how I feel about virtually every issue. I try to get, I mean, there's things on the hospital there's things on the CIA. Many of the questions you've asked me, I've put up my thoughts and reasons for my positions. It gives people who want the opportunity to see how I reach the decisions that we have to struggle with at the township board.
Now, there's been some chatter out there among the chattering classes that the board meetings are too long. Can you try to help people understand why it's important that the meetings be thorough?
Well, I think thorough is certainly an important point, and I've heard that chatter. I haven't heard any suggestions as to how you make them shorter. I wouldn't give up the citizen participation that we have. It's a tradition in this community. We're obligated by law to have public comment. But the tradition in this community long has been that when the board is on a particular topic, citizens are permitted to get up and speak to it. And I wouldn't want to give that up. I wouldn't want to give up the notion that the board should be having a robust debate and trying to convince one another. And I wouldn't want to see the board having all these arguments amongst themselves ahead of time, working out what the answer is going to be, and just reporting that in the meetings. So they take as long as they take. We've had some disruptive forces in the course of the last few years. Most of that's melted away by being diligent and moving forward. But there's a lot of stuff to be handled, and it really is up to the board to run the township. People wouldn't be satisfied if we merely turned it over to staff. For me, it is as important, if not more important, that people see the reasons why we decide what we decide, not just what we decide.
As we've been through the function and dysfunction of the last several years with the township government, who have been the allies that have helped you put the ship of state, shall we call it, buoyed it and put it more on a stable footing? Who have helped you out, and who can you look forward to working with in the future?
Well, anybody that watches a township board meeting understands the value and commitment to this community of Dave Lowenmeyer. I think he probably is the best person to have ever served the township as a trustee in the time I've been watching, which began back in 1977. He's just terrific, and the difference is that he's there because he's committed to the community, not for himself. Sheila Vanderveen, while she was here, had that same kind of commitment. And Larry Rosso, who's been a quiet but forceful presence in getting things done, has also been a great deal of help these last 4 years.
But there are several of those people that aren't going to be running again. You're going to have some fresh people to work with, more than likely. What is supervisor, where is your intention to give leadership to the township? Where do you want to see the township go?
Well, there's a lot of answers to that question. One of the things what we've talked about already is reaching out and finding businesses to help diversify our tax base, but they should be businesses that fit into the idea that we are primarily a quality residential community. So that's huge to me.
Fit with the master plan.
Exactly. Another thing is citizen participation. I am really big on having, I don't believe that the 7 of us who are elected have a lock exclusively on what's best for the community or how to solve our problems. That's why I like citizen participation in a meeting. But I also, over the course of the last 4 years, made proposals to the board for citizen participation. We had the Operations Review Task Force, a group of business people and government leaders who looked in detail at our operations and came up with recommendations for how we improve them. We had the Open Burning Committee, which is a citizens committee. When Sheila Vanderveen resigned because of health reasons and we had to pick a new clerk, we had the initial look at all the resumes was by a Blue Ribbon Citizens panel. And then we also found that our cable station, which you're watching now, was quite the backwater. And one of the ways I thought we could improve it was to have a citizens committee take a look at our policies and procedures and the manner of our operations. And we're on track to make that much, much better. So citizen participation for me is another huge thing to continue going forward.
If you go forward with asking for everybody's support and their vote in the August primary, what are the main considerations you would expect a voter to make as he looks at your candidacy?
I think experience matters. There is, frankly, no one running for township supervisor that has the involvement and commitment to the community that I've had. I've been involved in all sorts of volunteer efforts. If you're watching this, I'm pretty sure you know who I am because I've been around and I've been heard and I haven't been shy about it. But also, none of the other candidates has the experience in township government that I have, having served 6 years on the Planning Commission back in the 1980s, 5 of those as a chairperson, even though I was the youngest person on the Planning Commission at the time, and then I've done 8 years as trustee. I also worked with Brooks Patterson down at the county. I did some volunteer stuff and sat on a committee there, and Governor Engler had appointed me to a state-level board for review of local claims against the government. So I have the experience that no one else has.
Do you feel that that makes you best qualified to be the Independence Township Supervisor?
I do.
Very good. Neil, I'd like to thank you for sitting down with us for a few minutes to help our voters and viewers understand why you would be the best candidate for Independence Township Supervisor. We urge everyone to go out and vote in the August election. You've gotten a postcard most recently. If your precinct has changed, study that. If you don't know where to go to vote in the precinct election, you can call the clerk's office and find out exactly where you need to be. Thanks for watching, everybody. And